I hope that I can flip your mindset on this, everyone that's listening, because actually, you can really make lemonade out of these lemons when it comes to showing up. People relate so much more to struggle and hardship and pain than they do to those like high on the mountaintop moments.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so happy you're here with us today because we have an incredible guest joining us, Krista Demcher. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. This is so much fun. I'm very honored to be back again.
Yes, I love it. I feel like things come full circle. We're both in the same mastermind group. We've been connecting more. And this topic today, you are just the perfect person to talk
Mhm.
about this. So, really excited you're here. For those that maybe haven't met you before, or might be a new listener here on the podcast, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself, your biz, and also kind of your background in direct sales, too?
Yes. So, really, my story started when I was 1 year into my direct selling business and I was ready to quit because I couldn't sell anything. I was having the worst time selling. And at that point, my husband was in corporate sales. And, I was in this mindset of like, well, build it and they will come. I have a great product and people will just flock to it. But as we know, it doesn't really work that way. So I had the like family and friends sales, and some months were okay. But overall, things were not good. And we were actually in this really interesting time of our life where my husband had this crazy accident where, long story, he fell down a flight of stairs and my parents' old church. He was holding our daughter, tore his whole leg up, couldn't walk, let alone drive. And again, he was in sales, and a lot of what he did was go out and about to different
Yeah.
people and sell to them. And your income is drastically reduced. And at that point, my direct sales business was like fun to have money, but it really wasn't helping to support our family. And so I realized I either need to step this up here or I need to go do something else. Not because we weren't going to survive that period, but because you kind of have like a bigger look at life and like I don't like this feeling of just being dependent on one income and on my husband. And so I had a lot of trial and error with figuring out how to sell. And at one point, lamenting it to my husband and saying, like, I'm doing all the right things and it's not working. And he said to me, you haven't sold yourself yet. And meaning, like, you haven't sold yourself on the confidence you need to put this out into the world. And you also haven't actually sold yourself to people. You're hiding behind these products and you're not putting your personality into it. And I was mad, like, so mad at him. Like a husband telling a wife, "Here's what you're doing wrong." At least
Right.
in my marriage, that does not fly very well. But I think I was so mad because I was like, "Shoot, he's actually right." And so
Mhm.
really changed the way I looked at selling. And that business went from one that was struggling, and over the next 10 years, I built a very successful direct sales business with, like, thousands of team members and winning all the trips and an income that, more than supported our family. And about year 9, I started realizing this is a type of training and coaching and way to sell that really transcends beyond the direct sales space. And so I started my own brand, my company Acorn, which is a 5-step system to help you master mindset messaging to serve others better and sell more. And now that's what I do. So I run that through group programs, and we have a signature group story selling program. We have our She Sells, He Sells podcast, and I do consulting and speaking and workshops.
Amazing. So good. I love how your journey started in direct sales a little bit and has evolved and grown so much beyond that. So I know you're familiar with the industry. I know that you've seen, just like many of us, all the changes and the stories that are unfolding in the industry today. And, I think it's hard with change and like we've been there, our businesses have grown, we've gone through difficult times and changes as well. But there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think when there's uncertainty, that comes with a little uncertainty on how to show up for people or how to share your story on social when it's not as glamorous of times, and it's not, "Hey, I earned the trip today," or "My team just hit this new milestone," or these big fun celebrations that we wanna put out there on social. So, what are your tips on how to show up on social even when things feel like it's really hard?
Yes, great question. And I hope that I can flip your mindset on this, everyone that's listening, because actually, you can really make lemonade out of these lemons when it comes to showing up. People relate so much more to struggle and hardship and pain than they do to those like high on the mountaintop moments. Yes, when you post a new rank that you hit, you might get lots of people saying congratulations, but in reality, they don't really understand what that means. And to them, it's like, oh, good job, Becky, moving on.
Yeah.
However, when you are able to say, like, I am in a tough spot and
Right.
I'm working through something that I didn't expect to have happened. And here's
Mhm.
how I'm feeling, and here's how I'm moving through it. That is so relatable because every human has had that moment. And as humans, we like to feel like we are not alone in our pain. We want other people to share in it. Not that we want other people to hurt, but we want to know, like, oh, you went through that too. And that gives me hope and that gives me support. And so the first thing to remember is like, this is actually really gold in your social media content strategy. And while we wish you weren't in this situation, of course, you can make it into something beautiful. And so,
Right.
my top tip, and this is like, I hate even saying this because it's so overdone, but it really is to lean into authenticity and realize you don't need to try to be or act like someone you are not. And in that moment, you are figuring things out and you are navigating. And as long as you infuse some hope, and we can talk about like how to do that with messaging and you're not
Sure.
overly negative, you're really going to capture people. Like if we get really nitty gritty, your stories, like Instagram, Facebook stories, are such a great way to
Mhm.
share the journey. Yes, you can make a post and you can write some things or a reel or whatever it is, but the stories where you're showing up every day and you're like, "All right, this is what I'm doing today. This is how I'm working through it. This is how I'm feeling. I'm having a hard day today. I'm feeling motivated today. This is what I'm going to do." That's where you really capture people. That's where people truly connect with you. The feed posts are great and they are kind of more like a digital business card. But when you
Mhm.
can take people along the journey in your stories, it connects them with you. And it also is really therapeutic. It's actually like, it's like a video diary, essentially.
Yeah.
I remember when I started Acorn, I have a video from January, I think it was like January 7th, 2020, where I was in my car talking about, I'm going to start this new thing. At that point, I was still with my direct sales company and I started crying and I didn't expect to cry on the video and I
Yeah.
didn't post it, but I was like, what the heck? I'm just going to let this be. And I had never had so many messages of people like, you got this. This is amazing. I believe in you. And it made me feel so proud. And now I go back to that video all the time, A, to remind myself, like, you were so scared and look how far you've come, and B, to pull for content to be like, how it started, how it's going. It's such a
Yeah.
great hero's journey. So you're actually set up for content in a really great way if you understand how to look at it.
Mhm. I love that perspective so much, and, I think those that spend a lot of time on social, they also know, like, people are watching them right now when change is happening or unfolding, and everyone's kinda like, "What's she gonna do? What's her next move? Is she gonna fall apart? Is she gonna announce something else?" And so there's almost this opportunity that comes with challenging times where people are really kind of watching, even if they're not interacting. And I think that's the other piece of it is I was chatting with somebody this morning even, and she said, I've never had so many people reach out to me until when I announced that my company was closing. And people that never had shopped with me, that had never even engaged with me, were sending me messages just saying, "Hey, I'm thinking of you. I wish I could have supported your previous business. cheering for you, hoping the best for you. You know that there is kind of this elevated visibility that you're getting because people are kind of curious, like
Mhm.
what's going to happen next, right?
100%. Yeah, we love the drama. Like, it's why reality TV works and all the drama in there. Like, we love the drama. And while when it's your drama, it feels a lot heavier than the viewer, we're
Mhm.
business people. We have to think of ourselves as business people. And yes, you might go radio silent for a few days because you're processing all this. I am not here to say, okay, your company closes and the next hour you're showing up on your stories.
Yeah.
You need to feel good and ready to do that, but I do think there's a bit of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and not overthinking everything and just
Mhm.
speaking. And that's what also why I love like this Instagram stories, Facebook stories, because they disappear in 24 hours. And,
Yeah.
and if you put something out there and you're like, shoot, I shouldn't have done that, you can go back and delete it. It's okay. But
Mm.
that opportunity to connect is so good. And to your point, Becky, people are watching silently way more than they're watching and talking back to you. So use it to your advantage.
I love that. Okay, so getting tactical then. If somebody's listening right now and they're like, "All right, I'm in a place that I have a story to tell." And we all have stories to tell. That's a different podcast, different episode that we can get into that. But if you know that you're in a spot that you're faced with change or making an announcement about your business or pivoting, you think stories is the best place to show up. That's your number one recommendation. Just flip those stories on, face to camera, talking through things, or images with captions, like, give me a rundown of what that actually looks like in practice.
Mhm. Yeah, so, I mean, if we're talking very best practices, if I was in
Mhm.
that situation, I would take 2 to 3 days to process personally, to kind of
Yeah.
think through things, understanding, releasing yourself from the pressure of, like, knowing what the next step is for you because you're not going to very likely know that in 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
And then I probably would start with a post first. And so I actually I can we can maybe even link this in our show notes,
Yeah.
Becky, but when I left my company, so I
Mhm.
stayed at both companies for a year and I left my company. That company has since really changed its model, but at the time it was thriving. I was a very well-known leader in the field, and it was shocking that I was giving up my team and stepping away.
Right.
And the post that I did was really a compilation of videos and photos of just rooted in gratitude because that's the other thing we have to remember. Like maybe we don't like the ending,
Mhm.
and you're entitled to not like the ending, but think back to everything that happened before then and the friendships you met, the community you got, the great products you probably got to use,
Yeah.
the skills you've learned, the people, maybe you have great memories of trips or conferences. And so I really challenge myself like because when I left because I wanted to, but I also left because I kind of saw what was coming on the horizon.
Mhm.
And I challenged myself like stay grateful, stay grateful. And so it was a compilation of great photos and videos and taking you through like the last 10 years of my life and focused on that. I would do something like that. Focused
Okay.
in gratitude. You may have heard these are the things I'm grateful for, stick around. I'm going to be sharing what's coming next as I figure this out. You don't
Yeah.
need to have an answer for people. And so just getting the buy-in of other people's support and always keeping it, I say above the line, but like
Mhm.
positive. Even if
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh, I'm so mad," and you feel cheated and you
Yeah.
you just not present that way publicly. And so a post like that, and then, I would share that to my stories, and then I would start talking. And I do think what we're seeing right now in Instagram, Facebook stories is a mix of media is the way to go. So you don't
Okay.
want 10 slides of like, I'm talking to the camera for 10
Yeah.
full minutes. So maybe like a slide or two talking, and then maybe a static image with some text over it. And then maybe you
Mhm.
pick back up, maybe some B roll of like, okay, today, making my coffee, getting ready to do some research on what could be next. So mixing up your media is really helpful. But remembering when you do show up on your stories, like you could have your red puffy eyes if you were just crying a little bit, where it doesn't need to be perfectly polished. That's what's so great about Instagram stories. The mix of media is important, not because we want it to look produced, but because that's what we're seeing keeps people's attention.
Yeah.
We don't hold our attention, unfortunately, anymore for 10 slides of you just talking to the camera.
So good. There's so many good little nuggets there just to call out, right? Like, you don't have to have a plan of what you're doing next. So just want to highlight that piece again, because I think that's really important. That I know even for me, I'm like, I don't want to make an announcement until I have like, and now here's what I'm doing,
Yes.
right? Like, I think
Yeah.
there is feeling of being a perfectionist or having like the
Mhm.
appearance that you have it all figured out. And I think you're right. It's okay to show up a little bit in that messy middle where like, we're gonna see where this leads me next. Like, I'm
Yes.
hopeful, I'm optimistic, I'm excited for this next new chapter. Stay tuned. That also creates a bit of curiosity and
Yes.
anticipation that keeps your audience a little bit on the hook where they're like, what is she gonna do?"
Exactly.
Right?
And the other thing is it could create opportunities. Like if people see, "Oh,
Yep.
wow, she's open for opportunities," they might have something that they'll slide your way that you never would have, thought of before. So yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And then I think the other thing that you mentioned just around kind of mixing things up in your stories and keeping things also just really positive. I think we both probably share that value that you're right. Like you can be mad, you can feel really upset. And we've seen a lot of changes in the industry over the last even couple of weeks, right? That some things probably weren't done very well. And we all know that. Like, we're not going to devote a whole podcast to talk about it. But being able to show up for your audience and so they're still excited to see your content because nobody wants to just see somebody venting and, spilling the tea and just making it. Nobody's drawn to negativity, right? Would you
Right.
agree?
They might be watching it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, when there was a recent company closure, I went to TikTok and I was like, put it in. I'm like, let me see
The
what
popcorn.
videos. Yeah, and because it is the popcorn, but like, is that the who you want to be? Is that going to serve your personal brand moving forward? No. It's great to watch and like, catch up on all the tea, but that is not the leader that you want to be. And I think we have to remember as entrepreneurs, we are leading ourselves and we are leading other people. And even if right now you don't have a product or a service to lead them into, at some point you very likely will because this is who you are. This is what you love to do. And so you are leading people. And, if you've ever played on a sports team, I actually didn't as an older adult. I was like
Kids that play sports, you're good.
yeah, I have kids that play sports. My husband's a coach. I was a dance teacher or a dancer growing up, but like, how would you want a coach to lead you through a loss? Because the other part of it is you have to think like, if your company's door closed, you have customers that are also sad. They're sad
Mhm.
because they're going to miss out on the products that they loved and they're figuring out what do they do next. So they're looking to you to lead them. So don't show up and be like, well, let me tell you all the tea, because then that leaves a bad taste in their mouth of you. But also, like, well, wait, was I like buying into a bad company for all these
Mhm.
years? And they're likely not going to trust you in the next move you make. So that positivity is so important.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much, and I think you're right that there are many different stakeholders watching you, especially in our weird little direct sales world that we live in. You've got downline team members, you have sideline team members, you have customers, maybe you have previous hosts, and you're right that there's so many different emotions and people and factors at play. I think that's just another great reason to avoid the bad mouthing and the negative energy and just try to keep everything from a place of gratitude. Like you said, I love that. Reflecting back, sharing memories. Like I did the same thing. And one of the companies that just recently closed, I'm like, I spoke for them on their stage. Like, I'm going to pull some of that footage and share like some of those positive memories that
Yeah,
have taken me to where I am now and being
exactly.
grateful for that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Anything
absolutely.
you would say around like how to keep that curiosity factor or that spotlight still kind of
Mhm.
on you as you're navigating what's next? Because I think we both know that there's a little bit of momentum, maybe is the right word, that you get on social media, a little bit of a lift in your visibility when you're making a big announcement or when you're sharing that something major happened. And you probably want to keep that momentum up until
Mhm.
you're ready to announce what your next move is because people, again, are kind of watching you. So,
Right.
any suggestions on just what you're seeing working on social right now to keep that engagement high?
Yeah, I mean, this is where like day in the life kind of videos can be really interesting and not just like day in the life of Krista, but like day in the life of a middle-aged woman who has to figure out a new career, who is navigating a career transition. And shooting your day, So I woke up and I started working out to get my energy pumping. And then I had two calls with people who are connected in the industry to see if they have any leads. And, then I sat on my couch and ate some Ben and Jerry's because I'm still kind of sad about this. And then, just keeping it real, people like to your point about the messy middle, like people love to see the messy middle.
Yeah.
We think that they want the high on the mountaintop things, but actually that is not relatable because for most of us, I actually heard this great soundbite from Hoda Kotb when she was leaving the Today Show.
Uh-huh.
And she said they were asking her about like leaving and she left to be with her family more. But she said, most days are just a random Wednesday. Most days are the days you're waking up and you're taking your kids to school and you're making dinner and you have a few meetings in between. Like most days are not these super high moments.
Yeah.
And she used it because that's why she was leaving, because she was missing out on a lot of the day-to-day things that she wanted to do with their kids with that schedule. But I think that idea is so important when we're thinking of social media content. We stop ourselves because we think, oh my gosh, well, today was so boring and I had nothing exciting is going on. And like, there's nothing sexy and fun to share. But like that's what makes it great. Boring is great because for most of us, our day was boring too. And
It
like
was really relatable.
yeah, like, I wanna know, like, how many minutes did you find yourself scrolling Instagram reels when you're supposed to be doing something else? I wanna know, what'd you make for dinner? Where'd you take your kids that night? Like, that is really, really interesting, and so lean into the day to day, and then also, try to incorporate storytelling. Something I teach my clients to do in Acorn is, like, we find these micro moments, and then, like, how do we find the bigger meaning here? Like, what was there a lesson in that moment? Was there meaning? And how can you extrapolate that meaning and speak to it in a way that will relate to lots of different people, even if they aren't in the direct sales industry? So, a lot of times that happens in hindsight, looking back on your week. I do this in my newsletter that I share every Friday. I look back at
Yeah.
my week. Like, what moment happened in this week that I can write about, that I can storytell about? And then what lesson is in there for me, but for the listener too? And so, keeping it vibing with, like, authenticity,
Mhm.
storytelling, and, like, lean into the mundane and boring and
Yeah.
take people along the journey for that. I watch the stories that I watch, like, the Instagram stories that I watch every day are actually so boring. Like, the people's life is actually, like it's just, like, what they're making for dinner and what they did. But I'm like, "Oh, it's my friend. I'm gonna watch what she did
Yeah,
today." Like
it's like a natural curiosity, right? Like, how do they
yeah,
do? Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, and I love what you said there around, like, showing a day in the life or pulling out kind of what the lesson was from that moment. My hunch is that that's where people get stuck, right? Like, I could look back at my week and be like, "Oh, yeah, we did this, this, and this. It was fun. I did, fondue with my kids the other night, and that was fun. And, I took my daughter shopping, and it's so weird that she's 12 and loves Sephora, and we, went and did that." And then it's like taking that and turning it into the lesson or the like, what does that mean to you? Or why would somebody want to engage or follow with that? So any tips in just kind of finding those lessons or how to like translate that into a story that you're sharing on social?
Yeah, that is, like, what I teach
Yeah.
in programs.
You're like another episode, Becky.
Yeah. No, no. It's so nuanced, but the cool thing about it is when you train your brain to look for these things, it then almost annoyingly becomes something you can't turn off and you see stories everywhere. And so it really comes down to, I mean, this is like a little bit technical, but there's like five universal desires that as humans we are craving. And I'm not going to be able to speak them all out, but there's love and belonging, and
Yeah.
there's like security and safety, and freedom and spontaneity. And there's two others that I can't place at the top of my head. But
Yeah.
if you can look at moments, I mean, what I teach my clients to do is we pull out all the moments and
Mhm.
then we look like, what is the universal desire in here? Like, you're having this moment where, you stopped in the middle of your workday to go pick your sick child up at school. That is like freedom and spontaneity. You
Yeah.
have that that's the universal desire, the ability to have freedom in your schedule. So then how can you speak to someone else's desire for freedom and spontaneity? So it could be a story of like in the middle of writing you this email and the phone rang and it was my son's school and he said, "You need to come and pick him up. He's sick." And at first my instinct was, "Oh my gosh, this is going to like throw off my whole day."
Okay.
But yeah, which we have, but the second instinct was like, "Dang, how lucky am I that I don't have to go call a boss and tell my boss I'm leaving.
Mhm.
I can make my call my own shots." And that bigger feeling of having freedom is something that I think we can all relate to. Maybe for you, it's the freedom of choice when you've subscribed to all your streaming platforms and you can go to Netflix or Prime or HBO Max to decide what to watch. Maybe it's freedom in, I don't know, like what coffee you're gonna order. Maybe it's freedom in your bank balance because you've worked really hard to provide these opportunities. But freedom is so important. So it's like you take that moment, you find the belonging, and then you speak to the person about that desire and paint some examples of how they could look at it in their own life.
Love
And then
that.
kind of tying it together with a lesson. AI is actually really helpful with this too.
Oh,
I know. Yeah, AI is I was very anti AI in the beginning of it because I'm like, "Oh, it steals creativity and it's stories." But the key here is like AI can't find your micro moments, can't find these moments in your life. You can, but you can take that, brain dump it into AI, say, "I want you to help me find the universal desire here, and I want you to help me turn it into something that anyone, no matter what their industry, could relate to." And you'll you'll be amazed at what it will do for you.
that is incredible. Okay, that is gold right there. That was a
Yeah.
total bonus tip. Chris, this is not one of the
We
goals
didn't
I was
even
gonna
plan on that, but yeah.
so good. So good. I love that. Well, and I think especially as you're navigating and processing anything emotional, it's hard to be like, okay, how do I take a step back from the tears or the grief or the sadness or the frustration or anger, all of those things that you're feeling in the moment to, like you said, rise above and
Mm.
share a little bit of a story that goes along with it that people will relate to, that they can see themselves in. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that has happened over the last couple of months is just other people saying, like, hey, I've been there and my company closed too. And look at where I'm at now. Or, I've been there too. I made a major leap to a completely different industry. And like, I was okay, you're gonna be okay. And I think people really connect around that. So there is a little bit of an opportunity to put yourself out there. I think the natural instinct, though, is to like hide under your covers, right? And
Totally.
be like, I don't want to put myself out there, Krista. I don't want to tell the world how I'm feeling right now because I feel really, really vulnerable, right? So
Yeah, it's that balance of, like, protecting yourself and honoring what you need and then just, like, baby stepping, and what I found is, you know, back to that example where I talked about crying on my stories in January 2020. I mean, at that point in time, I had a very successful network marketing business, but maybe I don't know. To me, the writing was on the wall. Most people didn't agree with me, but I ended up being right. But the writing was on the wall of like where this was going.
yeah,
I also had the stirring in my heart to build something of
right.
my own. So it was both
Yeah.
things. But I was so scared because I was walking away from a very nice full-time income and I was so scared and I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't know what to say. And when I showed up on my stories that day, I think I was going to ask people to like fill out a survey or do something. I didn't show up on my stories to like talk about what I was going to do or at all get emotional, but it just sort of happened and I just decided what the heck, I'm just going to post this. And, you post one by one, so I was posting one by one, I'm like, "What am I doing?" And then I remember putting my phone down, driving to go pick up my son, coming back and seeing all these messages, and then I was like, "Oh, this is actually therapeutic for me, and it's actually really resonating with other people." So, it's like that baby step into it gave me more motivation to do more of it.
Yeah. Well, and I love it that you mentioned kind of like a video diary, right? I love that too, because I've definitely had moments where I'm with other people and we're like, we got to capture this. Like, there's something happening here. And we're going to want to look back on this day and be like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, this was the day that this happened or that happened. So maybe thinking of it more in terms of just like journaling out loud, video diary. And like you said, if hours later are like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean to post that, like delete it. Right? And in 24
Yeah.
hours, it's over anyway.
Exactly. Your stories expire in 24 hours. You can do anything for 24 hours. Be uncomfortable for 24 hours. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Oh my gosh, so good. There's so much goodness here. Last couple things that I want to hit on before we wrap up. First off, what is your favorite type of story to tell? I know you do this so beautifully, showing up on social media. I also get your emails as well, right? So I get to hear some of these stories, but what's your favorite way to show up on social?
Yeah. I probably am a bit of an oversharer. According to my children, I love Instagram story, so that is really where I started refining my personal stories, and again, that I think is a low stakes, low pressure way to talk out loud and kind of figure things out, but now I'm really leaning into kind of the, like, montage of moments with
Okay.
a story over top, whether that's like a voiceover or some text over top. That's been really helpful. In my ACORN methodology, we teach that there are really 6 signature stories you need in a business. So personal, which is what everyone thinks of, but there's actually 5 others that aren't so personal. And so something that, and actually I'll give you the link. I have a sales style quiz. Something that helps is understanding your own sales style. So I'm an engager. I like sharing personal things, but other people are an expert. So experts will be really good at sharing process stories. So kind of like how I did something, like soup to
Yep.
nuts, how to accomplish something, how to work through something if you have like a signature framework methodology. They
Yep.
also like sharing proof stories. So like client success stories, customer testimonial stories. And then we have educators, and educators really like sharing purpose stories, like mission based stories. They like
Mhm.
sharing pop culture stories, which are like taking things in the outside world that are happening and distilling them to like teach a lesson with what you're teaching. We saw that like with the Super Bowl and
Yeah.
Kendrick Lamar. I mean, that was everywhere. Those were pop
Yes.
culture. And then engagers like me, we like personal stories and we like pain stories, which are like, I know your pain, I feel your pain, I've been there. Well, I tend to go in that direction, but I do want to like embolden and fortify anyone that's listening with the idea of like, "Oh, that's not me. I feel really uncomfortable." Test the water with like a pop culture story. Find something that's going on in the world around you and like, where's there a lesson? And the other cool thing that I know I'm taking this question and running in a different
No, I
direction.
love it.
But the other thing that I want to say is that this time where you don't have a product or a service that you're selling,
Mhm.
it really opens you up with like creativity in your content. I find a lot of times like I'm like, oh, I kind of want to share this recipe that I'm making, but like Krista, that's not really on brand. So don't do that. But when you don't have something that you're really driving people to buy all the time,
Yeah.
sky's the limit, like, play around with fun content, do day in the life, do your makeup routine, do your skincare routine without feeling like I need to tell people, share your favorite, Starbucks order, like, tell me what you're making for dinner, like, have fun with your content, and you just never know what avenues that'll open up for you.
I love that. I think now that we've made it full circle to the end here, that like you've done a great job of how to flip that mindset when it comes to sharing your story, showing up on social, even hard times. Like there's an opportunity here. And what I'm just hearing you say is that there's a lot of opportunity. Like you can be
Mhm.
creative with your content and try something new and try on a different hat and see how that resonates for you and for your followers and see what gets
Mhm.
engagement. So I hope people take that away from this episode that there's just endless opportunity, even in times of struggle or times when it feels challenging or vulnerable to show up, that there's so much opportunity. So, last thing before we wrap up, favorite office supply.
Post-it notes, 100%. I love a Post-it note. In fact, in the early days of Acorn, before everything was as digital as now, I that's how I taught people to, like, content map, do
Yeah.
everything, was, like, really with different color Post-it notes. I had a whole system, it looked like a beautiful mind with all the things. But, yeah, I love Post-it notes. I love, the books I'm reading, writing, annotating them that way. I love
Yeah.
at any given time on my laptop, there's different Post-it notes of, like, quick things that I need to remember to do or, like, somebody says a
Mhm.
book that I wanna remember, so it's the
Post-it
Post-it
note of
note.
that.
That's
I love
sucker.
it. So
Lots
good.
of
So
Post-it
good.
notes.
Well, Krista, tell us where we can find you on social, of course, but the quiz or anything else that you want to share with our audience. I know anyone listening today is probably very eager to check out all the goodness that you have to offer.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. That's my social media platform of choice that I spend the most time on at Krista Demcher, Krista Demcher. And I have my website, which is simply www.kristademcher.com. I actually co host a podcast with my husband. We release new episodes every Monday. It's called She Sells, He Sells. And so it's really a mix of sales techniques and tactics with a little bit of like lifestyle content in there because my husband and I have been married for almost 24 years,
Oh,
but 3 kids together. So, like, it's just inevitable that
there's
we
stories
end
that
up,
are
yes,
there.
and telling stories. And we have some guests on there. And then I do sometimes solo, like I call them sales snacks episodes where you can get just a little bit. And then I do have a What's Your Sales Style quiz. So I'll give you that link, Becky, but it's a really quick 10-question quiz to help you figure out which of those 3 categories you fall into, and then you get a little bit of information on, like, how to match stories with your own personal sales style.
So good, Krista. Okay, we will link to all of that in the show notes. Thank you for spending time here with us today on such a timely topic. I know people are itching for this episode to drop because so many are kind of trying to navigate, like, how do I show up during these times? And so I know so many are going to take a ton away from this. So I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you so, so much. And can't wait to have you back on the podcast again soon.
Same, and you're gonna come on ours too, so I can't wait for
Yes,
that.
I'll be there. I'll be
Yeah.
there.
Thanks so much,
Thanks
Becky.
so much, Krista. Bye. This episode is sponsored by CintShare. CintShare is the #1 social media scheduler for direct sellers and loved by creators in any industry. It's truly your one-stop shop for all things social. Join hundreds of thousands of social sellers and entrepreneurs who turn to CintShare for free social media training and resources. Get started today with your free 30-day trial at moderndirectseller.com/CintShare.